Good afternoon and welcome to another adventure with Stuart and Andrew with their classic two-stroke motorcycles. Well, as we said yesterday, we're going to have a go at soldering some connections on the end of this leads for this battery, for this TZR 250 that we have. The problem was that when we investigated the battery, there were just bare wires shoved under a washer which was holding the battery terminals on. So what we think we're going to do, which will make a better job of it, I'm going to solder this connection, which I've got in my hand here, onto this wire here, which in turn will bolt on to this battery like so, which will make a proper connection. There'll be no loose wires. So what we need, the tools for the job, we need a soldering iron, electric soldering which we have here. We need some solder, a roll of solder, and we also have a tin of soldering flux, or you can get the liquid form of this as well, but this is soldering paste which is available local here in the Philippines. So that's the ingredients we need to do this. And the other thing we need is something to clean the metal with, because any grease on the metal will stop the solder taking. So what we have here is just a little bit of emery cloth which we're going to use for cleaning this connection up with. So if we get a piece of emery cloth and we have the connection we're going to solder onto the wire, we just need to clean this best we can, to take any grease off it and just clean it up so we have bare metal and there's no impurities between the solder and the connection. So we'll just give that a little bit of a clean up. Like so. We'll put a little bit of soldering flux in the bottom, soldering paste in the bottom of this, which will help it clean it. The soldering iron's plugged in, so it's hot, so you can be very careful that you don't burn yourself with a soldering iron. So I've improvised here, but you need something to stand the soldering iron on. I'm just resting it on a hammer here at the moment. You need something to stand the soldering iron on so the soldering tip doesn't burn what it's standing on, to keep the soldering tip away from it. So what we're going to do, we're just going to melt that flux inside that to clean it. The flux is the jointing agent and it also acts as a cleaner. So we'll just melt that inside there, like so. If I can get right, if I can just, that's okay. I normally have a little vise for doing this, a pin vise that stands up, but we haven't got one at the moment. Something else we need to get. So if we melt some of the solder on the soldering iron into the bottom of this, like so, and put the soldering iron back. As you can see in the bottom of here, the solder is now fused with the bottom of the connection. This process is called tinning. So what you do when you solder, you fasten some solder to one item, which is soldered to the bottom of this connection, which is called tinning. So we'll leave that down there for the moment, ready for using. Now, this is the wire here we're going to this is the wire we're going to connect inside here with a solder. So what we're going to do, we're just going to clean the wire a little bit with a bit of emery. We've got to dip it in the flux, in the soldering paste. And we're going to just put some solder on this wire. Like so. Put the soldering iron back. So just be careful with this though, so don't burn yourself. I'm just showing you basically what you need to do in here. It's very, very simple, but it makes a lot better connection. So as you can see now with this wire, that's also been tinned. You can see the solder is now fastened to the wire, which is called tinning. So what we need to do now is carefully get the previously tinned connection that we're going to use. And now we're going to melt both surfaces together. So we're going to melt there we go. So as you can see now that the solder on the wire and the solder on the connection are both melted and they're both now fused together, like so. So we'll put the soldering iron safely back. And now I'm just going to close these. Before we go ahead and do much more, I'm just going to close the clips over on this nipple, like so. So now what we're going to do, we're going to put a little bit more soldering paste on top of this joint, which has already previously been cleaned. So we'll put that on the top of there. This will help the solder flow neatly into that joint, or hopefully. So we'll just get the solder in one hand and we're just going to carefully melt some more solder into the joint. Well, we can unplug the soldering iron now, because that's as much solder as I want to put on with it. Now just be careful because that joint's still hot. But if you can see now that the solder has flowed all the way through the joint. And now that's a perfectly good connection. What we're going to do when this cools down, we've got some electrical shrink wrap. I'm going to clean this up a little bit with a bit of a file, and I'm going to get some shrink wrap and I'm going to melt it over this little bit of a connection so you won't see this, it'll be under shrink wrap. Well, that's the basic idea of soldering. So next time we'll look at doing something different. So I'll clean this up, I'll let it cool, and we'll connect the after it's been cold, we'll connect the battery up to it, which has previously been charged overnight. So there's the battery to connect up. The soldering iron's been safely unplugged, so that'll just stay there while it cools down so we can't burn ourselves. So we'll put the tools away and look forward. Whoops a daisy, drop the hammer. So next time, gentlemen, we'll look at us doing something different. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to put the battery back on, put the shrink wrap on the tables, and just check the connections to make sure all the lights and all the electrical things are working on the bike. Well, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye, people. Bye-bye.